All right, everybody, welcome back into Sports and Money. I am Ben Parker. Thank you, as always, for being with us. I really can't wait to dive into the Kansas City Chiefs offseason because it's just what I do. I really think of things from the general manager perspective almost anytime I'm looking at football. But I really felt like this Kansas City season had so many great things in it, or notable things, even though they weren't great, that I kind of wanted to take a quick week this week to just look back and see the season that was. Because again, ending with a Super Bowl victory the way they did, and in kind of unexpected fashion, and because it did have so many things in it, I wanted to just take a week this week and look at 10 things that I will remember from this season. Most of them for a very long time. Most of them good things, one of them not. We'll get to it. Number one, remember when Chris Jones was holding out, sitting with the Blues Brothers in the luxury box and getting blasted for it? That's been a long time ago. That's all the way back to the first weekend of the season when they were playing the Detroit Lions. Chris Jones was holding out for more money. He actually took a very large risk to come back to the team without getting another contract extension and the guaranteed money that comes with it, especially at his age. But it certainly worked out for Kansas City, and it doesn't look like it hurt Chris Jones. He was fantastic in the Super Bowl. He was good all season. So other than being 1 year older, Chris Jones is none the worse for wear. He never did get that injury, so he doesn't have anything to worry about on that front. Again, he looked fantastic, so he should get a very large contract in spite of the risk that he did take by getting on the field again. And we understand he was under contract, but again, that was quite a risk. That came and went. Hats off to him. Hats off to the Kansas City Chiefs for that. Number two, the love connection. T. Swift and T. Kelsey. Some of us, maybe more football serious-minded people, might have gotten tired of that a little bit at some point along the way, but it was interesting. It provided content for the NFL for an entire season. And listen, starting way back when, this was relatively early in the season, all the way through, of course, these two, the biggest star in the world, Swift, along with one of the best tight ends to ever play the game, maybe the best, Travis Kelsey, provided stuff. We will never forget it. Like it or love it or leave it, we will never certainly forget the combo there that they put on in the season that they had together. Number three, part of the offshoot of that, and some of this was already planned, some of it not, part of the offshoot of T. Swift and T. Kelsey getting together was that Kelsey was on every commercial break. So no matter which game you were watching, or even if you weren't watching the game, Kelsey was just on commercial after commercial after commercial. Now, I think one of these was already planned, but the Mahomes and my auto commercial was the one I really liked the best. I really enjoyed that. I thought that was funny with Mahomes and my auto, Mahomes and Kelsey. So really enjoyed that one. I will not forget that commercial. Number four, the Germany trip. So not all teams go overseas, and not all teams even necessarily enjoy the idea of doing it, but Kansas City did it, and they came out with a victory. I remember sitting there in the house of God, much to my carnal admission here. Maybe I shouldn't have been, but I was looking at my phone and following the game along as Kansas City played Miami during that early morning East Coast slot for us here on the East Coast, and they win 21-14. Miami, I thought, showed some grit in that game, but Kansas City was able to hang on to that victory. At the time, Miami was an incredibly hot offense. Even though they had had a couple of bumps, they had shown at that part of the season that they could really put up a ton of points, and Kansas City showed one of the early signs of just how good they could be, that they were able to limit that Dolphins offense to 14 points. Number five, it was a Class 5 rapid section of losses in which the team went 3-5. Punctuated by the Raiders' loss, and they did not look good. I don't think I will ever forget how ugly this Kansas City team looked during that 8-game stretch. I mean, they looked lousy. The defense was good, but the offense just couldn't put it together. And between the two sides of the football and special teams, they really were struggling to scratch out even victories. I mean, this did not look like a Super Bowl team. In December. It just didn't. And I admit freely, I was one of the people who got off the Kansas City bandwagon. Other than giving a passing nod to the greatness of Mahomes and Reed and just always being dangerous, I had pretty much laid this team by the wayside as far as having any significant Super Bowl hopes this year by that point in the season. You know, season when they were back there at 6-1, and you're looking at them in spite of the offensive struggles, they're continuing to win. But when they're losing 5 out of 8 games and the receivers look dreadful and Mahomes just can't seem to be great enough to get this offense to score enough points, even with a good defense, I had given up on this team on the AFC side. There were a number of other AFC teams at the time playing very well. Denver, had they been able to work their way in, looked dangerous. Buffalo looked like they had put it back together. Miami was always a little bit of a possibility. Baltimore was the team. The Ravens were the team to beat. Kansas City showed nothing during the second half of the season to make you think that they were about to go on another Super Bowl run. But they did it. So but I will never forget just how bad the team looked at that particular point, 3-5. I gave up on them. I'm sure most of you fans did not, but I actually did give up on them. Number 6, Andy Reid crossing the bridge over to not just all-time great, but to where some people actually nationwide are really mentioning him as maybe the greatest coach ever. Excuse me, I'm going to take a quick drink. It wasn't so long ago, 6-7 years, that people were criticizing Andy Reid for not being able to actually carry a team over to win the big one, to win the Super Bowl. Great offensive mind, one of the best coaches in the league, and yet there were a lot of people really criticizing him and questioning if he should even be considered for the Hall of Fame because he just couldn't win the big one. And yet it's amazing the difference that once you get a guy like Patrick Mahomes and you've won 3 Super Bowls and you've been to 6 straight AFC title games, it's amazing how much the conversation can change. And listen, Andy Reid has changed a little bit over the years, and he has flexed, and he has gotten better, but he is essentially the same coach now that he was way back in Philadelphia in terms of just being offensively innovative and being willing to do things different. He was actually one of the leaders of doing things different on offense. In a day and age in which a lot of people were still trying to run the football, he really was one of the guys who was the leader in the clubhouse of, hey, we don't have to run the football to win. We just don't have to. And so we're not going to try to stick to any necessarily run-pass ratio. We're just not even going to try to do that if we don't feel like that's our path to victory. And so it's amazing, though, how consistent he's been, and now that he's put some Super Bowls on top of the winning, how much it changes. And so I'm really glad for him for that, to being able to cross that bridge over, not just from, hey, this is a really good coach, but hey, this is one of the best to ever do it. Number 7, Andy Reid and Brett Veach being willing to flex and win in different ways. I can't tell you how many times, and I've watched football for over 30 years now, I can't tell you how many times I've heard guys in football say, hey, we do what we do, we are who we are, this is the way that we go about things. And the Patriots didn't do that, and the Chiefs aren't doing that. You know, there was a time when they won with an incredibly high-octane offense, big plays everywhere, just spectacular. And the defense was average, and they won a Super Bowl that way. And then they kind of redid the team, and they were winning with an offense that was still very good, but not quite as spectacular. Lots more short plays, lower design stuff with the occasional quick hits, but more innovation. And then the defense was better, kind of a top 10, top 12 kind of a defense. And then we had this year where the defense is in the top 5, basically, in a lot of the categories. And the offense is really struggling for most of the year. And even in the playoffs, it's not like they exploded for a whole lot of points. They just typically didn't. So, but Andy Reid and Brett Veach were the 2 guys who had to be willing to lead that, to actually be willing to win in different ways, to actually be willing to flex and change, and to realize we can remake this roster. We can redo this roster. It doesn't have to be the same year after year. This is not a rock band with 5 original members that we have to keep together. This is a constantly moving, ever developing, ever changing thing that we're dealing with from one year to the next, and we are willing to do it differently from one year to the next. So hats off to Reid and Veach both for that. Number 8, I debated whether to put this number 1 or even talk about it at all, but this is the right time for it. It's kind of a chronological order here, but the shooting at the parade, I can't tell you how much it absolutely sucks that we live in a world where this is normal and where it happens all the time, and where we we witness it, we see it, and then we all just have to go about our lives the best we can. It just absolutely sucks that the country has this kind of a problem, and I'm not going to deep dive on this, but I will say idiots and guns at parades is just ridiculous. You know, and for any people, I don't really care what age they are. For anybody to be showing up at a parade, which should be a time of celebration, it should be goofy, it should be family time, it should be Travis Kelce or the other Kelce at the Philadelphia parade showing up all lit and just screaming celebratory stuff at the top of their lungs. It should be all about that. And instead, we have this crap here where idiots and guns are showing up at a parade, and neither one should be there. The guns shouldn't be there, and the idiots shouldn't be there either. And I hope the guilty folks, and they're still working on that, I hope the people guilty of that go away to prison for a really very incredibly long time, because that's exactly where they deserve to be. I have no sympathy for them at all. I will say one message to those of you in Kansas City, whether you were affected directly or indirectly, my emotions go out to you. It's not something I even like to think about. There's really not a darn thing I can do about it. There's really not even much I can say about it other than that here, half a country away, we are thinking of you. We do hurt for you some a little bit when we think about it, and that's really about all we can offer there. So I'm going to run out of words there to say, but it sucks. And for those of you who have really lost something incredible there, I wish you the best as far as being able to move on. I know it will never completely go away, but I wish you the best as far as being able to move on, and I'm sorry that I can't say it any better than that. Number 9, to something more light, the Chiefs would not lose again. After that 8-game stretch in which they lost 5 of the 8, looked really ugly doing it, they would not lose again. 6 wins in a row, 4 of those in the playoffs, 2 of those against the Bills and the Ravens, on the road, and then, of course, the fantastic 49ers Super Bowl. I will never forget that turnaround, and there really was nothing to warn us that that turnaround was coming, but the Chiefs put it together. Hats off to the entire organization, the defense, Brett Veach for all of his work, Andy Reid for scheming the heck up out of it, Spagnuolo for scheming up out of it, even Matt Nagy to some degree there, and Patrick Mahomes for being his usually great self. But across the board there, to be able to put that stretch of victories together, 2 of them on the road. I think that the Miami win in the weather there was pretty much a given, but the 2 wins on the road, and then the incredible game there against the 49ers, and just kind of a bizarre game and put it out the overtime. Congratulations. I mean, that's just incredible to watch that. We'll never forget that as long as I've got my wits about me. Number 10, this will be the last one. This is one of the best Chiefs defenses ever. I mean, absolutely right up there with some of the best ever. So the 2014 defense was pretty good. Statistically, you could put them up there when you look at points allowed and when you look at yardage allowed. The 2014 defense was right up there statistically with this one. And so was the 15 defense, not far behind it. Before that, you have to go back to like 1994, 95. I think specifically, looking at my notes, the 95 defense was absolutely loaded. That was no joke. That was one serious defense right there in the mid-90s and the players they had there. I was a kid getting to watch that defense. Other than those 2 kind of short-term sections right there, 14-15, 94-95, you got to go all the way back to the 1960s before you find anything even close to resembling a Chiefs defense like this. And the 1960s really did have a defense almost all the way through. That was just number 1, number 2, number 5, almost every single year of that decade. It was an incredible year, incredible decade there for Chiefs defense. But this defense goes right up there with all of those Chiefs defenses. I mean, they did it a different way. You've got Chris Jones constantly drawing double teams and working to get pressure on the quarterback. But you've got a tremendous set of linebackers there working, doing all the pass coverage stuff, doing the run stopping stuff. Just a ton of work that the linebackers had to do there. And then you've got that secondary, which really was a special secondary, especially with Snead and with McDuffie. Those 2 guys, the whole secondary, but those 2 guys in particular really stepping up and doing some incredible things back there. It's tough to do. Tremendous defense. So I will never forget that defense and just how good it was. One of the best Chiefs defenses ever, no question about it. did it, I think, differently than almost any other Chiefs defense has ever done it. Some of the other Chiefs defenses were heavier up front. This one really was heavier more as you got to the back of the defense. So I will never forget that. Anyway, those are the 10 things pulling out from this particular season. Thank you so much for listening. We've got a ton of other content coming all through the off season. We'll see you later. Have a great one. Bye.